You won't believe how a dog saved an entire family from a hidden disaster no one else could detect. In a quiet mountain town in Colorado, Walter, a 62-year-old retired structural engineer, lived with his wife Linda and their 6-month-old grandson Emmett. They had always believed their old wooden home, where Walter had lived for over 30 years, was the safest place on earth. But everything changed when their gentle old collie Max suddenly began standing guard beside Emmett's crib every evening, eyes locked on the northwest corner of the room. At first, Walter thought it was jealousy or just an overly protective instinct, until Max began growling every sunset, as if trying to warn them about something. And what Max had sensed sent chills down their spines. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true stories that reveal just how deeply our animals look out for us. You won't want to miss what Max helped uncover next. At first, Walter thought Max was just being quirky, but then things took a strange turn that left him chilled to the bone. For over a week, Max's behavior followed the same eerie pattern. By day, he was his usual calm self, sunbathing by the porch, wagging his tail as Linda watered her flower beds. But as dusk settled, the shift was undeniable. Max would rise, ears alert, body tense, and head straight for the nursery. He'd plant himself firmly next to baby Emmett's crib, eyes glued to that same corner, his low growl rumbling like a distant storm. Walter checked everything. The windows were latched, the vents were clear, and there were no signs of rodents or drafts. Still, Max wouldn't relax. Linda, a retired schoolteacher with a practical mind, suggested maybe Max was anxious or unwell. But a full checkup at the vet revealed nothing. Max was perfectly healthy. The vet gently reminded them that dogs often pick up on changes humans can't sense, shifts in air pressure, faint vibrations, even ultrasonic sounds from faulty wiring or hidden leaks. That thought lodged itself in Walter's mind. Could Max be hearing something inside the walls? One night, while adjusting Emmett's blanket, Walter felt it. A faint breeze, almost imperceptible near the corner Max had been watching. It made the mobile above the crib sway slightly, casting dancing shadows across the room. Max stood instantly, growling deeper now, his eyes tracking every movement. That's when Walter knew. This wasn't imagination or instinct gone haywire. Something real was happening inside that wall, and Max was the only one who could sense it. That night, what Walter felt near the crib wasn't just a draft. It was a warning, one he could no longer ignore. As Max growled low and steady, Walter knelt beside the crib, placing his hand along the cool baseboard. There it was again. A subtle tremor, like the faint hum of something alive behind the wall. The mobile above baby Emmett's head twisted ever so slightly, not from his breath, but from that same unseen movement in the air. Max's body tensed, not out of fear, but out of fierce protection. His eyes never left that corner. Walter had built homes in his younger days. He knew houses talked, shifted, aged. But this wasn't normal. Something was moving. Something was wrong. He walked the perimeter of the room, slow and steady, Emmett sleeping peacefully in his crib. When Walter circled back to that same corner, Max rose and followed, positioning himself squarely between Walter and the wall. Protective, insistent, unyielding. It wasn't aggression, it was instinct. Linda entered quietly, sensing the weight in the room. When Walter told her what he'd felt, her expression darkened. "Let's not wait," she whispered. "Call someone, tomorrow." That night, neither of them slept. Max remained posted, unmoving, as if standing between the baby and a threat they still couldn't name. And for the first time, Walter admitted a quiet, gnawing truth, whatever it was. Max knew it was there long before they did. By morning, Walter wasn't just curious, he was deeply unsettled, and he knew they couldn't afford to wait any longer. At 8 a.m. sharp, he called a local home inspection service. The soonest they could come was 3 days away. 3 long nights with Max standing guard like a soldier on duty. The weight felt unbearable. Linda suggested moving Emmett's crib into their bedroom, but Walter hesitated. What if that just moved the baby away from the very thing Max was trying to protect him from? Determined to understand more, Walter cleared his work-from-home schedule and spent the day watching Max with a pen and notepad in hand. What he noticed made his stomach knot. In the mornings, Max was calm, sometimes even playful in the nursery, lounging in the sunlight streaming through the east-facing window. But like clockwork around 4 p.m., his demeanor shifted. His ears perked, his steps became more measured, and by sunset he was back in that corner, rigid, growling low, as if something woke up with the fall of night. Walter knelt again near the baseboards. The breeze he had felt before was now slightly stronger, just enough to flutter the mobile once more. A shiver ran down his spine. Could it be a structural issue, a faulty vent, or something even more dangerous? Linda returned home with a notebook full of questions for the inspector. She'd spoken with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, who mentioned spotting water stains on her wall, the very one that backed up to Emmett's nursery. Something was happening inside those walls, and Max had been trying to tell them all along. What Walter found that evening confirmed what Max had been warning them about, and it was far worse than he imagined. As the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows through the nursery window, Walter returned with a flashlight and an old stepladder. Max followed close behind, ears perked, body tense, every muscle on alert. Linda stood just outside the room, rocking Emmett gently, her eyes filled with worry. Walter climbed carefully and scanned the upper corner where the draft always seemed strongest. That's when he saw them. Hairline cracks in the paint, tiny but spreading like spiderwebs across the ceiling. He pressed his hand to the wall. It felt different. Not just cold, alive, almost. There was a faint vibration, barely noticeable but unmistakably real. Max growled again, deeper this time, his eyes locked on the wall like it was breathing. Suddenly, Walter remembered something from his early days in construction. Vibrations like that, in an old house like theirs, usually meant something wasn't stable. It could be settling wood or worse, structural fatigue. That night, Linda stayed up researching everything from plumbing leaks to foundation damage, whispering theories into the quiet room. Could it be electrical? She wondered aloud. Or mold, maybe something shifting with the temperature. But one thing chilled them both. Max only ever reacted at night. Why? They agreed to take turns staying up to watch. Walter took the first shift. At exactly midnight, the draft strengthened, and with it came a sound, not a creak or a whistle, but a soft, steady whoosh, like water moving inside the wall. Max growled again, but this time he whined too, a low, urgent sound like he was begging someone to listen. Walter clutched Emmett tighter. Whatever this was, it was real, and Max wasn't just sensing it, he was trying to protect them from it. When the inspector finally arrived, even he was stunned by what Max had been sensing all along. It was a gray Thursday morning when the home inspector pulled into the driveway. A tall man with decades of experience, he stepped into the nursery with clipboard in hand, and immediately noticed Max. The dog stood stiff, unblinking, right in front of the crib. "Dogs like him usually catch things before we do," the inspector said, nodding respectfully. Walter explained everything. Max's nightly growls, the draft, the vibration, the strange noise inside the wall. The inspector listened carefully, then began his work. He ran his level along the nursery floor. Slight tilt. He checked the wall with a moisture meter. Spike. Then, crouching near the corner Max had fixated on, he pulled out a flashlight and pointed to a faint dark line along the baseboard. "You've got elevated moisture," he said, frowning. "And that line. That's early water damage." As he tapped on the wall to test for hollow spots, Max let out a low, urgent whine, the first real emotion the inspector had seen from the dog. It was as if Max had been waiting for someone else to finally hear him. Step by step, the findings grew more serious. The inspector traced the moisture back to a failed gutter system outside. Water had been leaking for weeks, maybe months, seeping into the structure, slowly eroding the integrity of the wall. "This," he said quietly, "could have collapsed without warning." Walter's blood ran cold. Max hadn't just been reacting. He'd been saving them. What they uncovered behind that wall was far beyond what any of them had expected, and it left Walter breathless. Just days after the inspection, the contractors arrived to begin repairs. As they peeled back the drywall in the nursery, a heavy, musty odor spilled into the room. What lay beneath was a scene of quiet destruction. Black mold creeping across insulation, waterlogged boards crumbling at the touch, and worst of all, a main support beam rotted through nearly to its core. The house hadn't just been damaged, it had been slowly sinking under its own weight. One sharp shake, one heavy winter snow, and that corner could have given way entirely. The lead contractor turned to Walter, shaking his head in disbelief. "Your dog? He's the reason this didn't become a disaster," he said. "That beam could have snapped in the middle of the night." Walter stood frozen, glancing at Max, who sat nearby, quiet but alert, watching every move, as if confirming each danger was finally being handled. As the days passed, Max's behavior shifted. No more growling, no more whining. He'd still check the nursery, but now with a calm, steady gait, like a foreman inspecting a job well done. He'd lay by Emmett's crib without tension in his body, his breathing slow, eyes soft. Walter and Linda shared their story with neighbors, many of whom scheduled inspections of their own. And when asked how they caught it in time, Walter always said the same thing. "We didn't. Max did." This story reminds us that love often speaks in silence, and sometimes it comes with 4 legs and a tail. Max's unwavering vigilance shows how deeply animals can sense what we miss, often becoming protectors in ways we don't fully understand. For older adults, it's a powerful reminder to trust our instincts, observe closely, and never dismiss small signs, whether in our homes, our health, or our relationships. Sometimes, the quietest warnings carry the greatest weight. In a world full of noise, paying attention to subtle cues could very well protect what we cherish most, our family, our home, and our peace.